episode 386.
Oh, start again.
Okay, go for it. This is episode 386 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing, president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. I am very pleased to be joined this week by Representative Randall Pettigrew. He represents areas in southeast New Mexico, including Lee County and the Hobbs and Lovington areas. And he also did very well in our Freedom Index, scoring the second highest overall score. So welcome to Tipping Point, New Mexico, Representative Pettigrew.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Paul. I'm excited to be on with you guys this morning and learn exactly what a think tank does.
Well, we try to help the public and policymakers understand the ideas of limited government and how those ideas can help New Mexicans thrive and help our state get out of 50% on so many, or 50 rating on so many of these important issues in terms of making this state a better place to live. And we unfortunately haven't been at the top of the good list for a very long time. But you are definitely somebody in the legislature that votes in a direction that would help our state get better. So before we get into the conversation, talk a little bit about yourself. You're a relative newcomer to the legislature, and you do represent one of the more conservative areas of the state, but that doesn't mean that everybody in Southeast New Mexico always votes when he talked about representative and senators in the legislature. They don't always vote fiscally conservative or for limited government in the ways that you do. But talk about yourself a little bit.
Well, once again, my name is Randall Pettigrew. I am a fourth generation Lee Countian. My heritage goes back to 1906 here, before the county was a county, and born on a farm and ranch between Lovington and Tatum, the massive metropolis of McDonald, New Mexico. And I always joke with people in my hometown, it's so small that when my family moved away, they moved the post office to the next biggest town. So I graduated high school from Clovis High. My dad's engineering firm had taken off, and we had moved to Clovis to continue to do work. And as he expanded his business, to do work with Cannon Air Force Base and stuff like that. Graduated from New Mexico State in 1986 with a civil engineering degree. Did work in corporate America from California to Florida for a multitude of years. And when my mom passed away in 2008, I moved back to help my family, my sister and brother-in-law, with the engineering firm that they had taken over from what my dad had created. So that gives you a brief perspective of who I am and my history. In 2020, well, from 2019, there was multitude of talks around that at the time Representative Gallegos may challenge appointed Senator Fulfer. And when that happened in March of 2020, Shannon and I woke up to about 50 text messages and emails saying, well, pal, it looks like you're going to be running for office. We prayed about it. We'd been praying about it, and we ultimately ended up taking the challenge, and we won our race in 2020 pretty decidedly. Had a great opponent at the time. David Bryan Snyder was the superintendent of the JAL school system. Great opponent, great man, and but we came out victorious over that. And so I sat through two sessions, a 60-day and a 30-day session, and glutton for more punishment and wanting to continue to do this. The last 30-day session really invigorated me. It was a great session. We did really good things, and with respect to stopping the progressive left and their movements and their desire to just destroy the state even further. We stopped almost 50% of their really bad legislation, and it's just really invigorating to see what can happen when almost a super minority in both the House and the Senate can work together and stop the plague.
Yeah. So you've been in the legislature since 2020, and for the 2021 session. So you've only been there for one cycle, right?
Yes, sir. I'm
All
a
right.
freshman. I guess I'm still considered a freshman after I win this year. Maybe I'll get moved to a sophomore.
All right. Well, so let's talk about the 30-day session itself before we get into the post-session activities and prospective activities. But so, it's a Democrat-controlled legislature with, as you mentioned, virtual Democrat supermajorities and a Democrat governor. And yet, I agree with you that the session could have been a lot worse. Talk about a few of the things that you saw as either highlights or lowlights from the session itself.
Um, well, our highlights, in my opinion, at least on the House side, what we were able to do in the very beginning was send a message to the progressive left that if they were really going to push this agenda the way that they wanted, they needed to get ready to not sleep. And we did that quickly into the session where we did a 19-hour debate, and we continued that. We finished the session with a 26.5-hour debate, and at the end of that, we were able to stop the Clean Fuel Standards Act, and we were able to stop this horrific last-minute adjustment to Senate Bill 144 that would have just destroyed and decimated the any confidence that you could have in voting rights.
Okay, and that is a very important bill. It started out as SB 8, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more because for sure there's potential for that bill to rear its ugly head again. But any other highlights or lowlights from the session that you thought particularly important?
Well, I think that we continually prove that our progressives have their specific agenda, and anything that we see as something that may actually help our state is actually seen as an unfriendly amendment. We saw that when we go back to House Bill 2. This year our budget almost $8.5 billion.
And HB2 is the budget. Just
yes,
making sure people are understanding where we're going here. Yeah.
And so almost an $8.5 billion budget that has over $500 million in pork and earmarks for special interest groups. HB2 did some great things. The budget bill did some great things with respect to helping our teachers and helping some in a multitude of other areas with respect to building our infrastructure and just reinvesting into New Mexico the way that we should. That was the good part of HB2. The bad part of HB2, if you go back 3 years ago, we had just about a $6 billion budget. And what I can't figure out is where the Democrats and the progressive left think this money is coming from, because we've gone from a $6 billion budget 3 years ago to an $8.5 billion budget with over $2 billion in recurring expenses. And a lot of those $2 billion in recurring expenses happen to special interest groups, nonprofits, and just special earmarks for our governors and our leaders on the left, for the people that donate to them, that want their special things done. I mean, Um, how much money did we put into the Albuquerque Downs? Now that's a great thing. We want that quality of life in Albuquerque, but what was the return on investment for the governor? I wonder.
Mhm.
And with respect to that, so I voted no against that bill, not because I don't want our teachers to have a pay raise, but because it's not fiscally conservative. It's not something we should be doing. We reduced our permanent fund. We reduced our ability on our general obligation bonds. These things are not a good thing, and especially when we have the turmoil that we have in the world today, we should be just like anybody else that has a budget. We should spend, we should save a third, we should spend a third, and allocate what we need with respect to um, immediate spending, not recurring spending. And we're not doing this in a way that I can support. And so I voted no against that bill. I was actually, the House Republicans actually put together a budget that would have increased our permanent fund, maintained our teacher raises, and given us a better ability on our general obligation bonds. And that was considered an unfriendly amendment because we took out all the appropriations for special projects and for earmarks. And that's conditional, just like what I said earlier. Our they've got to feed the people that keep them in office. And by us taking those special interest monies out, uh, that was considered an unfriendly amendment. The progressive left just don't want to see anything amended to any of their bills. I guess they think they write the perfect bills, and unfortunately, most of the bills that we have from bail reform to um, oh gosh, our economic development group, most of the bills they're writing um, are in sad shape. They really don't do anything. We didn't really address crime this year. And so the House Republicans put in several bills that would have actually done a really good job at fixing our bail reform and actually brought real substantive change to crime in New Mexico. Those were killed in committee, and any amendments that we tried to do to their poorly written bail reform bill were considered unfriendly amendments. So
So hold
we
on. Let me ask you real quick. You mentioned pork and spending on specific projects of interest to legislators, and how you said the Republicans were trying to pull those out of a bill in the session. Now let's fast forward to where we are right now, with the governor having vetoed SB 48, which is a pork bill. Are those two separate things, or let's talk about this whole concept of the pork bill, and explain that to us.
so let's look at SB 48. Let's talk about my capital outlay. My capital outlay requests this year would have put $75,000 towards the Lovington school systems for the second phase of their greenhouse project, greenhouse and horticulture project. It would have put $50,000 towards the Hobbs schools farm, to where they could buy a new tractor and they could continue their ag projects there as well. Would have put money towards the ag extension facility in Artesia. That's just my junior money. $75,000 in recurring funds to the veterans in Lee County. Port projects like that, I support. It helps our community. It supports our vets. It supports our youth. The port projects I'm talking about are things that fund very specific organizations, from Planned Parenthood to um, um, studies to determine what the best facility needs to be built for criminal reform up in Santa Fe.
Mhm.
And and so SB 48 was vetoed. And matter of fact, that day I got phone calls from reporters across the state and locally asking me if I was in favor of an extraordinary session to get that money back, and my answer was hell no. I'm not in favor of an extraordinary session. I'm not in favor of a special session. The governor made her choice to veto that. Does it hurt my community? Yes, it hurts my community. But that's her choice, and she needs to live with her choices the same way we all have to live with our choices. I don't support a special session in any way.
So that wasn't the effort during the session. That was a different effort. Like, I just want to understand which pork we're talking about. So the $50 million in SB 48 is different from the effort that you undertook during the session, or the Republicans undertook to get rid of
Yeah,
some pork. Okay.
yeah. So in the HB2 version of our bill, we took out several pieces of it, and I have my notes somewhere on all the different parts that we took out. We actually reduced the amount of the bill in overall, and we increased our permanent fund. We actually took our tax cuts from 400 million, which was what was originally invested into the 400 to House Bill 2, to almost 800 million. To give back to working families. The difference between the progressive left version of House Bill 2 and the House Republican version of House Bill 2 is the tax cuts that we would have implemented in our House Bill 2 would have been specific to working families. The tax cuts that exist in House Bill 2 as written and signed today does do some work and some effort with respect to working families, but the majority of that goes to people that are already not working. I mean, we have
Hmm.
there will be a tax increase. There will be a tax fund. There will be a tax return to people that didn't work in
Hmm.
2021 this year.
Right.
Help me understand that.
Yeah, and I totally understand the frustration there. Obviously, that tax bill that passed was flawed. It was better than the alternative, which is government spending all the money, or somehow putting it aside. But it had some of those spending disguised as tax reduction provisions throughout it, and of course, it didn't address a lot of the issues that we have with the gross receipts tax and other policies that need to be addressed in a more reform-minded way than just a slight reduction in the rate. So,
Yeah,
um,
help me understand how 25 cents on every dollar, every $100 we spend actually helps
yeah,
our economy.
yeah, I totally concur with that. Uh, so I want to talk more still about this prospect for a post-session session. Uh, you mentioned that you opposed an extraordinary session. Now, for folks listening, an extraordinary session is when the legislature itself calls itself uh, into a session and discusses issues that they want to discuss, so they control the agenda. Now, they isn't you; they would be Brian Egolf and the Democrats, of course. And a special session is when the governor calls the legislature back in, and she imposes the agenda, and you all have to discuss the issues that she wants to discuss. Now, I understand as it stands now, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a extraordinary session is unlikely at this point, but a special session is very much still on the table for April. Is that where things stand as you understand it, or what's your take on the situation?
Well, for some reason, since I've been in office, I haven't been invited to the fourth floor for a meeting, so I haven't been able to figure out why that doesn't happen. But
I'm sure
so
you have the rumor mill, though. It makes its way all the
yes,
way to Hobbs.
so there is a rumor mill that the progressives and the governor are meeting, and trying to come up with a way that they can have their special session. Clearly, the things that, in my eyes, that would be on that agenda would be their horrendous election reform bill, what the governor and Maggie tried to put together in Senate Bill 8. Senate Bill 6 was one that was started by Senator Daniel Ivey Soto, and so we had some Republicans jump on that bill that to help maneuver that bill and get rid of some of the bad language out of it and make it a true election reform bill. We saw that thing move all the way through the Senate and to the House, and then it stalled in House Judiciary, and then the Senate Bill 8 stalled on the Senate floor. And so they took a one-page bill, and when I say one page, I'm just talking about the meat of the bill that was written very specifically to address election workers and aggression against election workers. And they turned that bill overnight, within the last 48 hours of session, into a 170-page election reform bill. And the governor clearly wants to be able to ensure that there is no security in our election system. If they were to have a special session and they brought SB 8 back, or some version of SB 8 back to the table, automatic mail-out votes, whether you want it or not, Paul, you would get a mail-in ballot. Now, I live in a very conservative county for the most part. Yes, we have people on the left side of the aisle down here as well, but we have a county clerk that does an amazing job with his voter rolls and taking care of our stuff. But if I was to take our voter roll right now, just like I did 2 years ago, and send out a postcard to every registered voter in Lee County, in my district, I'd get 12% of them back. Mm-hmm. That's just the turnover. That's just people are moving. And so let's assume we do that same thing with my 12,000 plus registered voters, and but every one of them gets a mail out ballot. What? No, those people, half those people, we have at least 10 to 12% of those people that aren't there. They don't live there. There is no control over that ballot. That ballot can still be turned in, filled out and turned in, because the SB 8, the Senate Bill 144 that we managed to stop at the last minute, would not require and would disallow signature proofing. We cannot allow for that bill to happen. The interesting thing, and there's really no reason for the expense. If you go through every special session that we've had, the average spend per day is over $1 million. So our 30-day session was over $30 million. Mm-hmm. That's the cost to our taxpayers. Okay, the 15-day session, whatever, for redistricting was $1 million a day as well. We don't need it. We don't need to do this. We have the ability in January, in the beginning part of the 60-day session, to overturn, to bring to the floor and attempt to overturn any of the governor vetoes. There is no reason to call us back into session. We can still get this done. If we want to talk about capital outlay, typically capital outlay is approved in July. It starts hitting organizations that get that, municipal agents that get that money in October. So say we wait until January. All we've done is delayed capital outlay by 6 months. That's not going to kill us. We can do this within the terms, within our obligations, in our 60-day session. I will oppose a special session all the way. if Senate Bill 48 comes back, if we go into special session and Senate Bill 48 comes up there, you can guarantee I'm going to vote no for it. Not because I don't want it for my town. I don't want it for Lovington and Hobbs and for Lee County, but because we should not be doing that. It's not fiscally conservative.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree more. And after a relatively successful 30-day session, I thought you guys did a great job in sticking together by and large, and trying to keep the Democrats on their toes and make sure that the worst policies did not pass, including, SB 8 was really, really bad. And we've talked about that on the podcast. SB 144 is still bad. And, it would be awful to come back and have to deal with yet another bad piece of legislation with the excuse being, oh, let's do capital outlay. And hopefully that does not happen. But let's move on beyond the legislative session. And you are in the heart of the Permian Basin in New Mexico here. Folks may not realize that New Mexico is the second leading producer of crude oil in the entire country, and your area of the state has really led that charge. And we're in an energy crisis with regard to the war in Ukraine and Russia. Now, before we came on, you informed me that you're not directly involved in the oil and gas industry, but engineering, you have a finger in that industry. So can you talk about just how things are going? And in Southeast New Mexico, I assume your kind of economic position remains very strong with the industry doing so well, but just enlighten us, for those of us who don't live directly in the Permian Basin. How's it going, and could it be going even better if we got some help from Washington and or the state of New Mexico?
We are progressing. We are continuing to move. We are continuing to drill, but we are drilling at a third of the rate that our neighbors across the state line are doing. We have the capacity and we have the capability. To be clear, Lee County is the largest producing county, an oil and gas county in the nation. Has been for years. And so what we do for the state and what we do for the nation is significant with respect to that. I find it interesting that Biden wants to shut down Russia pipeline to stall their economy and to stop the war. But it was okay to stop our Keystone pipeline. Wait a minute. If we shut down somebody else across the pond's pipeline to stop their economy so they can't afford to go to a war, doesn't it make sense that that's exactly what they did to us and with the Keystone pipeline? So it's frustrating that they speak out of both sides of their mouth. And our governor's no different than Biden with respect to that. She wants the money that we get. Well, she wants the money. We provide the majority of the severance tax that comes from the Permian Basin and from the San Juan Basin provides 92% of the K through 12 funding, over 40% of the state fund right now. And so what's keeping us from doing that? It's archaic rules, an environment department that refuses. Yes, we have. There was a thing on Fox News not too long ago. Talks about Jen Psaki was talking about the 9,000 leases that we have available in the oil and gas industry in the United States to drill. That may be true, but if you can't access those sites, if you have a 10-acre site or a 40-acre site that you need state land, a state land easement to access that site, but you're not getting that from the state land office, from Secretary Richards. How do you drill that? Add to that if you were employed at 2019, you were the sole breadwinner for a family of four, and the pandemic hit and you haven't worked, if you're taking complete advantage of every incentive, every handout that's given from the state of New Mexico and from the federal government, your net revenue for 2021 was $104,400. We can't hire people. I talked to a multitude of businesses just this last weekend that are bringing H-1Bs in because we can't hire our own people. So they're filling out their forms to bring other people from other countries to work here through the summer so they can get through summer tourism, or they can get through they can just have somebody working as a cook. So we have that same problem here, even though the oil and gas industry pays exceptionally well. It's hard to get people off the couch and back into the workforce right now when we're giving everything away to them. And so there's going to have to be, and that's a bigger issue with respect to our gubernatorial race. And several of our candidates on the Republican side have good plans for that. But as we look at it down here, the thing that stops us from moving right now is state government. Federal government, with respect to getting our access leases, access to the leases, federal government and the state government with the same thing on the state land, trying to actually get access, and then the requirements that are there. If you remember, Paul, last year at the Namoga conference, Governor got up there and spoke, and one of the first things out of her mouth after she completely insulted a group of very, very hardworking men and women by telling them that they needed to follow her mask mandate and put their masks on, and she wasn't going to continue until they did. The next thing out of her mouth was thanking. This is the only time I've heard her thank the oil and gas industry. She thanked the oil and gas industry for the excess revenue. It's allowed her to beef up her policing department, from energy and mineral natural resources to OCD to state land, so that she can go out and restrict them more and fine them more. I mean, she literally told Namoga, "Thank you for the money. It's helped me hire more people so I can give you bigger fines."
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of in line with the governor's perspective on oil and gas, is that she loves the money, and sometimes that turns into blowback directly against the industry itself. Unfortunately.
She had a meeting at the end of last year in Houston, Texas, with a multitude of oil and gas producers in Lee County and the Permian Basin, where she told them that if she had her perfect world and an on-off switch, she would shut oil and gas off in New Mexico today.
Mm-hmm.
She is trying to decimate our economy. And her concepts on the hydrogen hub to everything else. Are there some good things that can come from the hydrogen hub? Yeah, there's some good things that could come from the hydrogen hub. But the reality is the technology isn't there yet. And for us to subsidize and invest in another organization and another thought process that's not there, when at the very same time, what they need is natural gas, but they refuse to put natural gas on the clean fuel standard, to note it as a clean fuel. I don't understand what she's thinking.
Yeah, talk about the hydrogen hub concept. The governor does seem to be very, very supportive of that. She didn't get what she wanted out of the session. It seemed to me that it was mostly the environmentalists who opposed her, but I'm not getting a lot of folks in the industry or in general saying, Yeah, this hydrogen hub idea is really a great idea. We need to move forward on this either. So it seems like you have a strong block of opposition from the environmental groups and tepid support from the more industry focused group. So, what is the technology, and is it good technology, or is it something that's worth supporting or pursuing?
So I can't speak to, that's not my field of expertise, but I can't speak to the specific technology behind it. But you create that energy through two methods, either use of water or use of or combined with use of water and natural gas. And you convert that into an energy, and then you turn around and the bad byproducts, the sulfur dioxide, the carbon dioxide, can be re-injected back into the strata down there. And so the process works, the concepts work. And matter of fact, heck, we have oil and gas companies now. Occidental is got carbon dioxide cleaning stations where they're actually pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and then turning that into a power source for them, and taking the good pieces and using them. And so the the concept behind creating hydrogen energy is not um, something that's bad, but at the risk with technology not being there, with everything that they have to do over the next 5 years to get that up and running, at the same time not having the San Juan generating station. We tried to amend that bill to where we could extend the life of the San Juan generating station. We could extend the different things up in the northwest part of the state to ensure that Albuquerque didn't have brownouts this year. And even the Democrats from Albuquerque voted against that amendment. There's a way that this could work. The bill in itself, I didn't like the way it looked, and the majority of us didn't. And we tried to, like I said, there was a multitude of discussions that happened, especially over the last 7 days of the session, trying to work on that piece of legislation and extend the life of the San Juan generating station, and ensure that Albuquerque had all the power that they needed, and P&M had the capability to actually ensure that we wouldn't go through rolling brownouts this year. And it was sad that we couldn't work that deal.
All right. Well, we're going to have to wrap things up there. Good luck as we hopefully avoid a special session. Good luck as the primary season, and I assume you're in your race the only Republican. Is that accurate?
No, I do
You
have
have a primary? Okay.
I do have a primary opponent, and so we'll run that race, and we'll run it like we did last time, and we'll continue to do what we've done. I ran on a multitude of different issues, one of them being our Second Amendment rights. You've seen me on and some of the committees I'm in, and on the House floor, I continue to push for our Second Amendment rights, and I will. Somebody asked me the other day if I was aggravated that I had a primary opponent. But you can't sit there and fight for constitutional rights and then get mad that somebody uses their constitutional right to try and run for office. So I'm we're gonna run our race the way we're gonna do it, and I'm gonna continue to support my constituents throughout this, and promote our vets, and promote our help with our senior citizens, just like I have on helping to remove the Social Security tax. As you know, I co-sponsored that bill both times.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't able to get it everywhere we wanted, but we got some of it. Same thing with the vets, trying to get tax reform for the vets, we didn't get everything that we wanted, but we got a start at it this year. And so we're going to continue to do that. At the same time, I've committed, Shannon and I have committed to helping our Republican candidates along the I-25 corridor get elected. And so we're going to be working on that this summer as well.
All right. Thank you, Representative Pettigrew. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube and Rumble channels. Subscribe to this show at Apple, Stitcher, or have your Google Home play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.